9.5 inches in diameter. Ladies' ball is 9 inches in diameter. The basket on the inside measurement is 18 inches in diameter, so that we know that 2 of the ladies' balls will go through the basket at the same time. One of the things we want to do when we're speaking about arc is we want to make sure that the ball is going to reach an apex on its arc, or the trajectory toward the basket, of about 3 to 4 feet above the level of the rim. As we talk about the arc, let's talk about an analogy, and that analogy might be this: that if the ball had eyes and it is approaching the basket, if we have a very flat arc, what's going to happen is that the basket takes on an oval shape. That flat arc is typically around 30 degrees, and the usable size of that basket is only about 9 to 9.5 inches in diameter. And so the usable target is very small. As the basketball trajectory begins to elevate, and we get up to that point where the ball is maybe 3 or 4 feet above the level of the basket, we find that this gets more like a 45-degree angle of attack, and that basket now has a usable target area of about 13 inches. And so it's quite a bit larger. The flatter the arc, the more oval shaped that the basket becomes. We can make those shots, there's no question about that, but the thing that we want to do is to be able to shoot the basketball at the largest target possible so that our percentage of makes goes really high. And the recommended angle of attack on the arc is somewhere between 45 and 55 degrees. The thing that really is difficult, though, as shooters and players, you don't have time to assess exactly what the angle is, so you kind of have to learn what that angle is. And I would say that one of the things you want to do is try to take and make sure that the very highest part of that arc or trajectory is about 4 feet above the top of the basket. And about how do we get a higher arc? Well, the shooting arm, as we are releasing the basketball, must elevate from the set point. We want to make sure that the elbow is always elevating to a point where it is above the eyes when we're ready for that release. And this will allow us to get upwards on that arc so that we're closer to the 45 to 50 degree angle. The power for that shot has to come from our core muscles and our leg muscles in order to get that kind of an arc. One of the reasons that shooters shoot flat shots typically is because they are underpowered and they haven't put the power source together to propel the ball at the basket. When we shoot flat shots, what happens is that the rebound that may result from a miss is always a long, flat rebound. One that either goes back to the shooter or it might rebound in the opposite direction. When you shoot a ball with a nice arc, the basketball, when it hits the iron, tends to bound upward and it stays around the basket. When it stays around the basket, you still have an opportunity for that ball to go in the basket. Number one, you want to make sure that you have a high angle of attack. Number two, we want to avoid flat arcs that just slide over the front rim. Thirdly, we want to make sure that we elevate the elbow. That's how we get that nice high arc. And finally, let's make sure that we use good legs, which results from the use of our core muscles and the leg muscles.
And it's a lot of fun. Individually, it's one of the best feelings you can get, because every time you touch the ball, the crowd, you get the oohs and ahs every time they stand up. Yeah, I play with a guy named Steph Curry, so that helps. I've been seeing it for 6 years, and what he did this year, I'm surprised it took him so long, but his 13-3 performance, that was amazing. That was the one that comes fresh to mind, though, 13 threes, and under.
Rule that you should always keep in mind when you're preparing to grab a rebound. Flat shots create long rebounds and high arc shots create short rebounds. Very simple. So breaking that down a little bit, when a shooter releases the ball and has a flat shot with very little arc, the rebound is going to have a tendency to bounce out longer. That's because it's contacting the rim at a more extreme angle, and the ball will usually bounce back in the same manner that it arrived, long and flat. Higher arc shots will respond exactly the opposite, with short rebounds that tend to stay close to the basket. And
as soon as the ball comes off, find it, explode out of that. First 2 steps are key. Go get the ball, make sure you chin the ball, don't bring it down here. Makes it easy for guards to come in and strip it from big guys. As soon as you get it, know where your defender's at, pivot away from them. Don't ever turn into your defender. Find your outlet, kick it out, or take off with the ball.
Ever tell you, hey Jason, stop rebounding so much. So making sure that you have that mentality of crashing every single time is going to automatically separate you from your teammates and for sure to your opponents. 3 things I want you to focus on. Number 1, rebounding is 90% will, 10% skill. 90% will, 10% skill. The best rebounders in the history of the game weren't the most athletic, weren't the highest jumpers. They were the ones that flat out wanted the baskets. You want to stop their momentum and pursue the basketball. Very often, that stop of momentum may just be a forearm to the chest just to stop their forward momentum and then pursue the basketball. All right, again, we're talking about nowadays, guys are jumping over your backs and there's not time to be able to completely turn your back and do a butt box out. So as you check to make sure your offensive rebounder is coming in, you want to stop them with the forearm, stop their forward momentum, and then go pursue the basketball. Talking about defensive rebounds is you just want to become a bulldozer, and that means exactly what it sounds like. But here's the tip to it. When I become a bulldozer, I want to have a quiet upper body and a loud lower body. So I'm not pushing them out like a football player. I want to load my legs and use my lower body momentum to push that defender out. In this case, I'm not even necessarily worried about pursuing the basketball. My number 1 goal is making sure that my offensive guy does not get the rebound. Bulldozer, I want to have a quiet upper body and a loud lower body, keeping my offensive person away from the ball. Let's talk about offensive rebounding. The first thing that I like to talk about is knowing where the shot's going to come from and now attacking what I like to call the weak slice of the pie. 70% of shots that are taken from one side of the floor come off on the other side of the floor. So if the shot's being taken from the right wing, I want to position myself on the left side of the floor, making sure that I can kind of anticipate where that ball is going to come off. Here's the secret behind that. You got to see the basketball. If you don't see the basketball, you'll never know how to anticipate where exactly the ball's coming off. You can see where the shot's coming from, but you may not see, hey, maybe the shot's short, maybe it's long, and now you can use your vision of the ball to be able to anticipate also where that ball's coming off. Attack the weak slice of the pie. Another tip for offensive rebounds, you want to make everything a 50-50 ball. That's exactly what it sounds like. I have just as much of an opportunity to grab the rebound or get the ball as the defensive person. All right, so one thing that I really like to hammer home with this is I want to position myself to be hip to hip with that defensive person. If I can get myself hip to hip and someone can take a picture, they shouldn't be able to tell who's on offense or who's on defense. If you can get to that point, you've definitely made it a 50-50 ball, and I promise you, 50% of the time, you may get that ball. The third technique I want to talk about from offensive rebounding is what we call SOFO, which means spin off of the first object. Spin off of the first object. Of course, it's every defender's job. Shot goes up, they're supposed to box out. Your job as an offensive rebounder is to make sure that their box out does not stop your forward momentum. Spin. You can even bulldoze, you can do whatever you want to making sure that you're not dying on that first contact.
Celtics rebounding and dribbling.
It starts with a decision that I'm going to do this every single game, open gym, pickup game, one-on-one game, practice when I don't feel like it, playing a good offensive player, playing a poor offensive player. I am a defender. I am a lockdown defender. Lockdown defenders are made. They are not born. On defense. Every coach says that, and yet every player tends to stand up on defense. So maybe it's just a lack of definition. You don't know what it means to be low. If Jason's ready to attack me, go ahead and get in a nice stance. Right now you see that Jason's head is below my head. The constant self-check for am I low enough is my head needs to be below Jason's head. So if Jason stands up a little bit, I can stand up a little bit. If he goes into his attack, I got to get lower here. If you go into your next practice or game just constantly playing the height battle, watching head height, all of a sudden you just became a better defender. Here's another thing. You're going to foul less. When you play tall defensively, it's easy to get called for a blocking foul. But when you're low, there's less mass with which to block. You're much harder to get by and you get a lot wider. Here's the second part of body position. Imagine Jason and I are trying to race to the front rim. So many defenders play so far off an offensive player that they have no chance of winning the race to the front rim. If Jason and I are racing to the front rim, and don't go yet, but to start, I've got to run forward and then go back to the rim, I'm going to get blown by every single time. Playing off someone means you have to react to pass fakes and shot fakes, and at some point, you've got to move towards them. The moment you move towards someone, you are beat. So body position isn't just about height. It's about playing close enough to touch. Close enough to touch. Now, if you change the distance you guard someone because of their speed, or you just back off someone because they're a bad player, you're forming bad habits. You want to be arm's distance, head below all the time, making good habits. We're going to talk about hand position. Now, you've probably at some point been told that you need to keep your hands up on defense. I'm here to tell you that that's wrong on the ball in certain situations. If I'm guarding Jason and he has a live dribble, meaning he hasn't used his dribble yet, I never, ever want to stand up and get my hands up above my head because I'm putting myself in a position to get beat. As long as he has a live dribble, I want to keep my hand at shoulder height. So as I'm guarding Jason here at the live dribble, I keep my hand at shoulder height. From shoulder height, if he does go in to take a shot, I can still raise it and contest. If he does go to make a pass over my shoulder, I can still raise it and contest. But I never want to actually extend my hand over my head when we have a live dribble. Second part of hand position, I want to take one step back. When the person you're guarding is dribbling, you actually want to keep your hands low, not high. You want to keep your hands low because low hands allow you to be balanced and move laterally quickly. High hands raise you up and make you slow laterally. Also, when Jason's dribbling, the ball's low. Here's another pro tip. Low hands, palms up. As Jason's dribbling, if I play low hands, palms down, I'm going to be constantly reaching, which looks like a foul. And a clever offensive player like a James Harden or Joel Embiid, they know how to loop and hook your hands and get a free trip to the free throw line. But it's really hard for him to do that if I keep palms up and only slap up at the basketball. Lockdown defenders all have something in common. They dictate the action, they don't react. If you're reacting on defense, you're gonna get beat. But if you dictate, you can anticipate. Great defenders anticipate not because they're guessing, but because they're forcing. So right now when I'm guarding Jason with a live dribble, he only has three things he can do. He can dribble to his right, he can dribble to his left, or he could pass or shoot it. Three things that he can do right here. So if I'm playing him straight up and I have to react to whatever he does, I'm gonna always be a step behind. What I can do with my body position is I can take away two things and dictate the third. I can play him in such a way that I'm taking away the passes and shots by being close to him. With my angle, I'm taking away a right-hand drive. I'm dictating a drive to his left. I can anticipate it then and then battle him for something that I can predict. He can still choose to drive right, but he's not going to have an advantage doing it. He can choose to take a shot, but he's not going to have an advantage doing it. It's contested. They're on the dribble. Don't sit back and allow them to set up their favorite dribble move. Instead, you force them to their position of weakness. When Shane Battier was guarding Kobe Bryant, Houston Rockets versus LA Lakers in the Western Conference Finals, he knew he wasn't going to shut down Kobe Bryant. He just had to put him into his zones of least efficient offense. That's exactly what you're doing. With Jayson right here, he's probably going to be less efficient as a right-handed player attacking to his left. So I actually want to get into him, force him to his left hand, and then battle him for it, as opposed to letting him set up his favorite move or set up and run his offense. Be the aggressor on defense, dictate the action, don't sit back and react.
Got it! Just drives it down the floor, Pippen's there over to Ronnie Malone into Pippen. No offensive foul.
He was playing hip-to-hip defense, and he beat his opponent to this spot. He would go for the steal. But the difference is, when you're sagged off or an opponent is attacking you, Scottie Pippen goes for the charge call. You can see here an opponent is attacking him, giving Scottie Pippen the chance to move only laterally, thus taking the charge. We get to his post defense, the aspect I found most revolutionary when I first looked at him. His uncanny ability to use his anticipation and agility even when guarding the post. The first thing is that he wasn't concerned with the post position he was giving up, as long as his opponent wasn't making contact to seal him. This gave him the ability to time the entry pass and jump in front for the steal. The footwork is what makes this tactic possible. It's a double jump. You start from behind and then jump to the side of your opponent. This clears up the space you need to then jump in front of your opponent to intercept the pass. A jump to the side and then in front. If you've seen my videos in the past, you will know how much I focus on the defensive stance. You can see Kobe's right here, his shoulders in front of his knees, level with the ball. His feet are wide and his back is straight. Very similar to the stances of Michael Jordan and Patrick Beverley. You not only see this stance from the best defenders in the NBA, but you see it from Kobe time and time again, no matter who he's guarding or at what position. The advantage of this stance, as compared to the stance that coaches have been teaching for decades, is that it puts your shoulders at the same level as the ball, which gives your reach ample space to get in there and poke the ball away.
Take a look at this defense right there. And you see how Kobe was able to use the body.
Now it's time to examine his footwork. His feet are wide apart from his stance, but notice how they never stop moving. They always try to get in front of his opponent, force him one way, then take that away, force him the other, then take that away. They never stop moving, and the opponent never knows what to take advantage of. And as soon as the opponent decides which way to go, he'll attack the hip, ride it hard, and try and beat him to the spot, forcing him either to change directions or giving you the opportunity to go for the steal, swiping down or poking at the ball as soon as you get position. Kobe Bryant does this time and time again to the best players in the world, harassing them, locking them down, attacking their hip in his low defensive stance. His feet never stop moving, always trying to beat you to the spot, force you one way, take it away, go for the steal, force you one way, beat you to the spot. It's what makes good defenders great.
Oh, this is going to be on the DVD I want to sell. Look at this stance. Down in his stance, lower than the ball, moving his feet. Oh, I'm getting excited on this. This is good. Oh.
First team all defense. First team all defense.
I still remember watching that play live, and it made me realize one of my favorite things about Tony Allen. Besides his passion and energy, he's the best player I have ever seen at the dig steal. This occurs when you're in the plug position. That means you're sagging the line between the ball and your man. It allows you to discourage dribble penetration, and in Tony Allen's cases, it allows him to swipe at the ball and usually dislodge it or get a jump ball situation. There are two reasons why Tony Allen is so good at this. First, it's how quickly he gets into the plug position. You can see in this play, he doesn't waste any time going from guarding the ball to dropping right back into that plug position. Now, being in position is one thing. I mean, a lot of players can be in the proper position. But what makes Tony Allen so good at the dig steal is his anticipation of the ball's placement and his ability to get his hands on it. And it's a pretty consistent trend. He's always positioning his hand right at the opponent's waist level, as this will be where they're dribbling it or where they're trying to gather the ball against the opponent who's playing on-ball defense. That's where Tony Allen comes in. The dig steal, however, isn't the only thing that catches my eye when watching Tony Allen off the ball, because there's also something unique about how he jumps passing lanes.
Klay Thompson, there's Allen again, a steal. Allen all the way in, and the flush.
You can see he always intercepts the ball with his chest open to the ball handler, which goes completely against what I was taught as a player and what I see a lot of coaches preaching, which is to use the denial hand, the hand closest to the ball handler, to deflect the pass and to go chase it down for a steal. Tony Allen, however, always opens his chest to the ball handler and reaches across with the other arm. And that's because he's not reading his opponent, he's reading the ball handler. You can see in this play, Tony Allen barely looks at Klay Thompson. He's reading Curry the entire time, what his eyes are doing and what the ball's doing. And that awareness of the ball is crucial. Just look at this play. The ball handler has picked up his dribble and is staring down Tony Allen's matchup. So he assumes a pass, he stares down the ball and jumps the passing lane. Which is why he always gets steals with his far hand. His body is always positioned with his chest open towards the ball handler. This way he can watch the play develop, read the ball handler, and anticipate his decisions. And this is why one of the tips I have told players who want to become better defenders is to be less aware of their matchup and more aware of the ball handler and the primary action, because that will lead you to anticipate and disrupt.
Another turnover has come from behind the arc. Finally getting one shot to go. Entry pass.
That's why he has been a 5-time All-NBA defensive team member.